Okay, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We'll give it about 30 seconds and then we will get started. I'll introduce everyone and we'll begin the Q&A. Okay, let's jump in. So to introduce everyone, my name is Hiram Grenny. I run all of our partnerships at Ui Charitable Advisors, and I'm joined by Phoenix Hafen from our team as well. Phoenix runs all of our product and just about has his hands in everything that we do at Ui Charitable. So he's our jack of all trades. And at Ui Charitable, we do all types of philanthropic planning for our clients and the financial advisors that we work with, and CPAs, attorneys, all types of different wealth professionals. We specialize in donor advised funds, but as a part of that, that's broken off into a number of different charitable vehicles that we work with the ultimate goal of making charitable giving easy. And we are very excited to be joined by Jessy Gilger, who fits really well into that plan of making charitable giving easy because we have a really unique partnership with Jessy and his firm, Sound Advisory. We've done a lot of work in the Bitcoin world and donor advice funds with Jessy, and he's an expert in that. So we'll ask many questions centered around Bitcoin and charitable giving related. And so I'll introduce Jessy, read his bio, and then we will jump in and start with some of the questions. It'll just be kind of a conversation between Phoenix, myself, and Jessy. So Jessy has over a decade of experience in the financial industry. He started at a large firm where he saw the limitations of one-size-fits-all advice, sparking his passion for more personalized service. Eager to focus on each client's unique needs, Jessy moved to progressively smaller practices and earned his CFP designation along the way. He also played a vital role as the programs chair for the Financial Planning Association of Northern California, showcasing his dedication to fostering and thriving financial planning community. Jessy's expertise extends beyond traditional finance, as he is also deeply knowledgeable about Bitcoin's potential in reshaping the financial industry. At Unchained, he helped numerous clients with Bitcoin-focused consultations and technical onboardings. He sees Bitcoin as a cornerstone asset for building solid financial plans. Now, the fun stuff about Jessy. Outside of poring over financial statements, you can find Jessy jamming on his guitar, playing chess with friends, or indulging in his favorite sushi spots. As for cooked food, nothing beats a medium rare ribeye. He loves spending weekends disconnected from tech, camping and riding bikes with his wife and son, immersed in nature and embracing life's simple pleasures. At Sound Advisory, Jessy melds his passion for educating with his knack for simplifying complex money topics. He gets great joy in guiding clients towards financial freedom and looks forward to doing so for many years to come. So jumping in here, Jessy, we're very excited to have you. Thank you for being here and joining us for this Q&A.
Absolutely.
So to start off, can you tell us a little bit about the partnership between, I mentioned Unchained during your bio. So we have Unchained, we have Sound Advisory, your firm, and we have our firm, Ui Charitable. So if you could tell us a little bit about the history there, where that started and where your passion for Bitcoin came from.
Yeah. So I did a decade of financial planning without Bitcoin as a cornerstone asset, and eventually decided to kind of leave that industry and join Unchained. So Unchained is a Bitcoin native products company that really specializes in helping people secure their Bitcoin. So they assist clients in holding their own keys and using structures that make financial sense given a client situation. So Unchained products company, I left traditional finance to go work with them. And then about 2 years into that, we spun out an affiliate or a sister company called Sound Advisory, which does financial planning and financial advice for those Bitcoiners. So Unchained does products, Sound Advisory does advice, and then UI enters the picture because knowing things from the old traditional financial planning world, I saw a tool, specifically the donor advised fund, and was looking for a young, nimble, healthy company to help us install this for Bitcoiners. And that's where UI Charitable enters the picture. So at Sound Advisory, I have clients who typically have Bitcoin or other appreciated assets, and they're looking to use those in charitable ways. UI enters the picture as a donor advised fund sponsor, and they're using Unchained as a product company to be able to hold Bitcoin securely and natively. So kind of a few moving pieces there, but that's kind of how they all fit together.
Yeah, and in a follow-up to that, Phoenix, feel free to jump in after this. Where did your personal passion for Bitcoin come from? How did that revolution happen? It sounds like you got into financial planning and then that grew on you over time. So tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Yeah, so started in the financial planning industry in 2013, and along the way started to see cracks within the system. The biggest being that tonight people could print money and not yet ask you or I, right? Hiram, Phoenix, myself, we're working every day, we're helping clients, we're trying to earn dollars, but the snap of a finger, if something breaks, more dollars can just be created out of nothing, right? So that caused me to be a gold bug at first. I'm like, okay, well, we should have some sort of hard or sound money, kind of hinting at the name, a decade later, but gold bug for a bit, and then started to see the limitations within gold, namely can't zap across countries, and ultimately found Bitcoin along the way, right? 2016 got curious, 2017 exposed, 2018 and 19 learning, and then 2020 was really intentionally starting to use it for clients. And from there, the passion just grew and developed. And there's a common saying amongst Bitcoiners, says, fix the money, fix the world. And that money is so integral to the human experience. It touches so many different things that we do, whether we're saving, investing, spending. It's a part of all of our action. And if you fix something as foundational and core as money or what money is, there can be so many downstream effects that ultimately end up improving the world, right? There are many different causes and problems. And I noticed within my clients, they have certain heart bents or things that they care about. And I really enjoy the process of making their assets and Bitcoin specifically more efficient to help them fix the world in the ways that they care about. So that's what fires me up and ignites kind of connecting all of these things together: tax, Bitcoin, fixing the world, and ultimately what landed us into a discussion like this.
It's awesome.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that's where the name came from. So that's interesting. What other gaps were you seeing in traditional financial planning that made you think, okay, we need to specialize in Bitcoin and really lead with that?
Yeah, the first was probably the most obvious. A client would come in and just ask about Bitcoin. I heard about it from my son or my niece, and they told me about Bitcoin. What do you think about it, Mr. Advisor? And a few of the firms I was at, it was like, slap on the wrist, don't talk about it, refer it out. You can't do anything. And enough of that question over and over again, it causes you to wonder, okay, well, why am I getting, it feels like a non-answer. And then, so the compliance component was the first major gap of just, okay, well, I don't want to be slapped on the wrist. If I really care about these people and they have a question, I should answer it honestly and with some education behind it. So that was about 2018, 19 for me, where I was deepening my own education and ultimately felt like I had to move out to kind of move up and be able to talk about topics I cared about more deeply. So that it may sound like a trite answer, but just clients asking the question, hey, what do you think about Bitcoin? And then having to zipper your mouth shut. That was the most frustrating and earliest experience. All of the other downstream effects of like, okay, well, if we're putting Bitcoin into IRAs or donor advised funds or doing tax moves, that all stemmed from just the early unlock of being able to freely discuss and open up to education.
Super interesting. And do you feel like currently now that this world has opened up a little bit, in what specific ways do you see that Bitcoiners are still underserved in the financial planning and advisory world? And what gaps are you trying to fill specifically with them?
So a Bitcoiner often feels alienated because there's still a dismissiveness in the industry towards that. I would say most financial advisors, if they're getting that question, they still don't have a confident answer that's informed by a ton of education. And so let's say a client has some material amount of Bitcoin in their life, they'll ask the advisor, well, what do you think about this? And if the advisor dismisses it away, then that client or that Bitcoiner feels like they have to hide, or, there's some portion of their net worth and they've got to keep these cards close to themselves, and they can't really be fully open and transparent. And they don't know whether to have shame or guilt or just keep it hidden. And so it's not a free and open relationship, and it's just not going to be as deep. So the first is just advisor awareness, understanding, and education that Bitcoin is in many more client portfolios or financial pictures than you would suspect. Maybe a small piece, but if it's small and hidden, it's a splinter that grows in that client's mind, right? And they feel like they can't be talking to their advisor. They're ultimately going to leave and find someone else who they can talk to about it. So adoption is growing. We've seen it, it's best measured in 5-year chunks where it's like, hey, this train is not slowing down. If you want to skate to where the puck is going, you should deepen your knowledge, because you're going to be getting the question more and more.
Gotcha. Can you elaborate on that a little more? So you mentioned you have clients who are, more and more integrating it into their portfolios. Are there other products they're utilizing? I mean, we're talking a lot about holding Bitcoin within a DAF. Are you seeing more clients using it in IRAs or other types of products? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Bitcoin is kind of infectious in a way, right? Whether it's the price that goes up over time or the understanding that deepens, it ends up like trickling into other clients' vehicles and resources, right? It might start out with just like a little bit of Bitcoin on an app. Oh, okay, I'll buy $20, $100 here and there. Then if they get more educated and they're deepening their understanding, they're looking for more ways to get exposures. Like, oh, I've got that old 401k that's just sitting there doing nothing. What's an option? Okay, well, that kind of finds its way into a Bitcoin IRA, or give it enough time, number goes up on people and they've got more net worth than they used to. And now they're looking at their charitable giving efficiencies, right? Okay, well, now we can look at using a donor advised fund to improve some of that tax efficiency and giving Bitcoin to causes they care about. Things like loan products enter the picture sometimes. So the industry is growing and maturing as far as products, but you'll see that no one jumps in the deep end the very first time. They'll dip their toe in, and then, like any financial advisor who's seen enough client financial plans, know that there's no two profiles that are identical, right? Everyone's different in their own ways. And so they're going to find uniqueness in how they experience those products.
Interesting. And as you're getting deeper into the financial planning side of things with Bitcoiners, we know that many Bitcoiners are hodlers. So they're sitting on this Bitcoin, not planning to sell anytime soon. What's the role of an advisor, your role, with those types of clients?
Yeah, so you typically don't have to convince a long-term holder that long-term holding is good. But then when it starts to become really good, they ask the question of themselves, like, wow, this Bitcoin has happened to me. I feel like I need to use it now to change my life. And so what's the best way to do that? Am I selling some Bitcoin? If so, what are the tax consequences? Can I be smart about that? Which bucket do I pull it from? Should I take a loan against it? Or maybe I don't want to do any of that. I'm still hodling, but I need to protect it now for my family, because if something happens to me, I'm the primary technical Bitcoin person in my family. I'm the one who knows the most. And so is my wife or spouse going to be okay if something happens to me? So looking at inheritance planning, making sure there's the right legal and technical structures in place to make that not a headache or a treasure hunt if something bad happens to someone in the family. So even with a long-term hodler, right? Someone who's just like, okay, they might want to protect it for generations and beyond themselves. And so that's got different angles to it. Traditional finance knows the inheritance and estate planning work that goes into financial plans, but there's a whole nother layer with Bitcoin, especially if clients are starting to hold their own keys and treat it more technically, right? What does the spouse do if they're handed a device that looks like this, right? Well, this is very intimidating if people don't have it early comfort or knowledge about, you know, what these devices do and how they can secure Bitcoin for their heirs. So there's a lot to get into. It's case by case.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Gotcha. So you talked about there's not really, two of the same, every client's different. You kind of are putting together a different plan based on, how much they want to dip their toes into it. How do you see it maturing over the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think that becomes more standardized, or do you think it stays completely personalized to each client?
You'll want both. I mean, there are tools that are common, but they can be applied in different ways. So let's take estate planning for an example, like a will and a trust. Two common tools. Let's think of them as like a hammer and a saw. Okay, well, what are you going to use that hammer and a saw to build, right? And so tools can be helpful towards an end goal, but they are not the end goal in and of themselves, right? If we're building an estate plan for Hiram, it's going to look different than an estate plan for Phoenix because you guys might have different intentions for your heirs, or, you know, there might be different charitable intentions along the way. You might still be using wills and trusts. Each of you has a tool, but you're using it in different ways to build your plan. So not to give you a non-answer there, but it's a bit of both, because things will be common, right? IRAs, trusts, wills, loan product. The products are just the products, and the knowledge comes from, like, it's the difference between having a hammer and a saw, or like hiring an architect who can build you a house. Different experiences, and there will be customization along the way if you choose it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So thinking about Bitcoin clients you've had for a long time, they've seen large gains. And obviously this partnership, which we mentioned at the beginning between UI Charitable and Sound Advisory, we're running into more and more clients that have charitable intentions, and they have large Bitcoin holdings or even other cryptocurrency holdings. And so how do you, I guess, and let me think through how to ask this question. There are large tax implications when it comes to these large gains. So how do you talk clients through that and help them work through those tax implications, be really tax efficient while also trying to maximize their impact and take care of their giving?
Yeah. So I do think that before all of that, we don't put the cart before the horse, and a client has to have this giving nature or intention before you find the tax efficiencies.
Yeah.
Because there's never going to be a return of more than $1 on the dollar that you give, right? You can find some savings along the way, but it will be a fraction of what's intended there. And so getting specific about the causes is kind of step one. But then when we know there's charitable intention and people are wanting to fix the world, and it's very common for us to be working with a Bitcoiner who was buying back in 2012 or 2013 when Bitcoin was hundreds of dollars, and now it's tens of thousands, and, you know, depending on the week, sometimes over $100,000. It has drastically changed their net worth and therefore tax implications if they sell it. And so a donor advised fund is a very efficient tool to kind of unlock some of that net worth and get a double tax savings impact. They don't have to sell the Bitcoin, they can give it. They get the fair market value of the write-off without having to experience the tax. And so in many ways that can unlock some of the freedom to start to give financially. And the donor advised fund can also flip things back into dollars if they have a charitable cause that doesn't know anything about Bitcoin. And so can be kind of, in a good way, self-serving for the client to realize a tax benefit, but nothing has to change on the charities end to be able to receive benefit. And so in that way, we almost use the donor advised fund like a washing machine sometimes. And you said, you know, sometimes they do have other cryptocurrencies they have, and sometimes they're not as proud of it. They hold on to it because there's a tax if they sell it. And so we can use a donor advised fund to flip alternative cryptocurrencies into Bitcoin and hold it, or flip it into dollars and give it, flip it into Bitcoin and give the Bitcoin. There's so much flexibility within that tool that we can kind of wash and change things with tax efficiency in mind, all with the goal of what was the end cause they cared about at the end of the day, right? Was it building wells in Africa? Was it human rights causes in authoritarian countries? There's so many ways to fix the world. We're just trying to connect with a efficient bridge when we're using donor advised funds. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if
So
I can,
building on that, sorry, Phoenix, one
oh,
follow-up.
sorry. Yeah, if I can just add to that. You talk about flexibility and how important that is. That's what we deeply care about at UI Charitable is donor flexibility. And so yeah, so we've worked really hard to incorporate Bitcoin and cryptocurrency into our donor advised funds. And I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but we're the only offering where you can contribute Bitcoin, hold in kind, and grant in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
And
I have a fun
so
story. So if I could piggyback off that, because
yeah,
I saw all of these when we talked about the three companies, right? Sound Advisory, I work with donors often. UI works with donors, but it also is a product company. And then they decided to use Unchained for this like multi-sig collaborative custody. When we smush all three of those together, there's a very interesting case study where we had a client who bought Bitcoin back in 2013, was way up on it, decided to give that Bitcoin in this year because they had a large tax event, wanted to knock it way down. So I think it ended up being like 7 or 8 Bitcoin gift, but they didn't want to give it all, right? They wanted to continue to hold Bitcoin because they've seen it work for them for more than a decade, but they wanted to give some. And so they ended up being, to my knowledge, the very first Bitcoin in-kind gift out of that donor advised fund to a charitable entity called the Human Rights Foundation. And they work with people in authoritarian countries experiencing financial repression, and they'll use Bitcoin in circular economies, right? And so Bitcoin made its way from an exchange, let's call it Coinbase or Kraken, way back in the day, went through this client, grew, went through a donor advised fund, became a tax efficiency in that way, and then went to the charitable entity as a Bitcoin, and now is being circulated in an economy in a third world country that has financial repression. So that Bitcoin has benefited multiple people along the way and never hopped back to dollars. And that wouldn't have been possible without you guys being a step along that journey. To my knowledge, you're the only donor advised fund sponsor that allows for something to be that flexible along the way. I've had clients come through the door and like, oh, I was looking at Fidelity. I wanted to give my Bitcoin there, but they automatically flip it to dollars and they have to hold it in not Bitcoin. And I work with so many clients like, no, this is too important to me. And I care about this fix the world component too much to let that happen or to just go back to dollars. And so very much appreciated your guys's flexibility and willingness along the way to learn what this is and how it's unique to clients that are often underserved by traditional means.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear stories like that because our team has worked really hard to say how can we offer maximum donor flexibility and not compromise on that at all. And so we built an offering we're really proud of as far as Bitcoin goes. Hiram, you had a question earlier that I cut you off on a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it was just kind of building off that on the planning side. This is shifting gears a little bit, but you mentioned that, of course, for somebody to use this strategy with the donor advised fund or other charitable vehicles in Bitcoin, they have to be philanthropically inclined in some way. And so how do those conversations generally go? I mean, you have a lot of clients that are really focused on saving money. But when it comes to this aspect of saving the world, is that generally client brings it up to you? Is that you being proactive and asking clients about it? What does that
I would say
like?
I normally bring it up for 2 reasons. One, it's what I care about, and I want to unlock what's in that client's heart because it'll deepen the relationship. Oh, you care about adoption or international ministry or your local church or hospital or school. It just deepens the relationship with the client. Yeah. And the second is we ask for a tax return before clients ever even end up getting presented a draft financial plan. And so I know exactly where to find the line item on the tax return. It says gifts by cash to charity. And I'm like, okay, well, I know if they're giving by cash to charity, there's more efficient ways to do that. Almost 10 out of 10 times you can use a donor advised fund. And this is independent of Bitcoin, right? You could do this in the traditional world with appreciated stock or real estate or number of other means to do it, but improving the tax efficiency, now you're connecting two dots. You're like, hey, I know exactly what the client cares about. It's this cause. Let me show them how they can save money and give to that thing that they care about. They can use that saved money and end up giving more to that cause, or keep the remainder for themselves. Whatever they want to do, that's their choice. But you've got the target, the end goal of like, this is what's deeply important to that client in fixing the world. And then you're just creating a strong tax efficient bridge to connect those dots. And so I know where to find it on the tax return. I'll bring it up. If they don't, they might not have mentioned charity at all in an introductory call, but then they show me the tax return. I'm like, oh, you gave $10,000 somewhere to something last year. I am asking about that and letting them know, okay, well, if you're giving that much per year, here's like an estimated savings you could have by using a more efficient vehicle.
Yeah, super cool.
So getting into that that a little more, we talked a little bit about DAF and holding in kind and how we built out that functionality. I think we should talk a little bit more about the additional transparency and security that they get out of a multi-custodial vault within the DAF. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So with the Unchained Donor Advised Fund that you guys partner with in securing, Unchained is holding a key, University Impact is holding a key, and that end client, the donor, can be holding a key. And those three keys combined are what's securing that Bitcoin, with any two of those three keys required to unlock the Bitcoin to be moved. And so a client, by participating with a key in the Bitcoin network, can always see that their Bitcoin, when I gave that 7 or 8 Bitcoin, it is truly still sitting there, right? University Impact or Unchained didn't sneak it out the back door and give it away early, and then I have some, IOU on a screen that I think it's 7 Bitcoin still, but it's really a lot less. They get to participate, and that's very important for Bitcoiners who are suspicious of the existing systems and powers that be, and so they desire some verification within a process. It's not the majority of the key control. They understand it, but they also understand that's the trade-off for the tax benefit, right? You're kind of releasing that Bitcoin. UI is now participating, and that'll be a team in securing that Bitcoin for the end cause, whatever that end cause may be. And so another unique way that I think you guys in your partnership with Unchained have created some flexibility, freedom, and opportunity for verification that the rest of the industry is just not providing, right? Bitcoiners are going to be underserved by every other IOU DAF out there, because at the end of the day, they don't have cryptographic ability to verify that their asset is truly where they think it is. And so
Right.
kudos to you guys
I always
for,
like to
yeah.
I always like to bring that up with donors, because there's always a lot of donors when they get really familiar with how DAFs work, and it's, oh, okay, it's I'm donating these assets to the DAF. I no longer, legally own them. There's some concern there sometimes. And so being able to set up a multi-custodial vault for them, where you'll still hold a key, you still have visibility into the vault, you're still signing off on the transactions when you're sending grants to charities, gives them a lot of peace of mind to have that
Yeah, it was the
that
same.
additional
So
security.
I thought of DAFs when I worked at Unchained and saw the exact same setup within the loan product. The client doesn't have a majority of keys when they give their Bitcoin for collateral to a loan, right? They can't. If they truly owned the majority of that collateral, they could just take it back. And
Like, the
so
product doesn't work
there
without it.
already
Yeah.
are products where they're like, okay, well, I don't have the majority of the key control, but I'm going to keep one because it's my check on the system, right? If I see that Bitcoin leave, then I can be like, okay, well, now something, and I need to reevaluate my decisions from there. So yeah, seeing it within the loan product, I'm like, okay, well, there are ways that Bitcoiners will part with their keys and have a little less control over the Bitcoin if they can still have some verification. And so you guys were instrumental in finding that flexibility and balance. And yeah, unlocking things for Bitcoiners is they're a force to be reckoned with, and we want to release them on fixing the world. So
Yeah, we do too. Okay, so shifting back on kind of the planning side again, you've mentioned a couple times how the charitable giving and some of this financial planning you do fits into estate planning.
Mhm.
And a lot of that involves multi-generational planning of saying, I want to not only pass value on to my heirs, but also maybe values and what I care about. And so how have you seen conversations about donor advised funds, about charitable giving and Bitcoin with Bitcoiners involve those estate plans and trying to pass on not only value, but values and their charitable legacy?
Yeah. So once the Bitcoin enters the DAF, it's never coming back, right? It's going to a 501c3 from the DAF. And so many Bitcoiners think it's still early within Bitcoin's adoption. You go to a grocery store, 98 out of 100 people don't know or care about Bitcoin. And so they think it's still early, and they'd prefer to hold, especially if you have a 40, 50, 60-year-old, and they're like, okay, I'll give some. But I really think this is going somewhere else. Kind of makes sense to get a tax benefit now. So they'll do it, but the Bitcoin's being held within the DAF. And that becomes like a heap of burning coals in their mind of like, all right, well, this is going to charity. I may not even be the one giving it. Let me involve my spouse. Let's involve my kids. And with donor advised funds, you could set up a successor donor advisor, right? So if that client passes, here's the next person in line that can make those grant recommendations. They like that unlock. They're like, oh, I don't have to be the one. This doesn't have to be given in my lifetime. It can start the discussion for kids and families, really unite around core values. What do we care about as a family? What are the causes that we think make sense? And then the Bitcoin's going there eventually or anyway. So let's have the discussion about what we want to have happen with it. And that is unique to a lot of different families, but it can be a common resource to have a discussion around, because oftentimes it's still just sitting there, right? The majority of Bitcoin that we see given to a DAF is not granted out to the final charity the next day. Bitcoiners will intend to hold for cycles or decades, or as you brought up, maybe even generations. And it's fun to watch. It happens in many different ways, but yeah.
Just continuing on that idea of inheritance, we're talking a lot about, okay, what happens in a donor advised fund when, it's time to pass it on to the next generation. Are there, what else does the rest of that kind of financial plan look like around, next generation and inheritance? Are there other products that you work with clients on, or, what does that look like as you put together the whole plan?
Beyond the donor advised fund for inheritance, probably the trust is the next most common revocable living trust, for the main reason of avoiding probate for your estate. So if you were to pass away without a will or trust in place, depending on the state, they may have different degrees of expense or time you have to wait, or a court process you have to go through. It might be public record. And Bitcoiners want to avoid all of that headache, right? They don't want to have to pay Bitcoin or have the state involved in how their assets go to heirs. They don't want it to be slow. They want it to be private. And so setting up a trust can round out the other parts of that estate plan, where you get some direction and intention up front about how you want your Bitcoin held. Non-taxable event to put Bitcoin into a revocable living trust. You can name spouses as co-trustees. And so if something happens to one of those spouses, the other is the trustee the next day. It doesn't have to be decided on by a court. And so you can think of it as almost like a joint account in some ways, that's just stronger and more protected from a legal perspective. That's a early and common discussion we're having with a lot of Bitcoiners. And then if Bitcoin appreciation takes their net worth to higher and higher levels, then we're often having irrevocable trust discussions if there's going to be like a death tax in play. Kind of a different world or next level up, but inheritance planning, often having an early brainstorming discussion about what structures might be appropriate for that client and family, and then helping them navigate through the legal document creation process, once legal documents are created, Bitcoin doesn't care about trusts or wills or any of that, right? It's just a cryptographic network. All it cares about is private keys. And so then we're taking those legal trust structures to something like an Unchained or other providers where you can have the legal wrapper, but have different degrees of key control underneath that, because Bitcoin doesn't care about that trust. It says, show me the keys. Do you have the amount of keys you need to move that Bitcoin? And so it has to happen at a couple different layers for families. They need the right legal structure to simplify headache in those processes. And then what are the right technical considerations that if we are holding keys, we do not want to create a treasure hunt while our loved ones are grieving. And so getting ahead of that can be a little bit of work, but there's a huge peace of mind. Once they have that box checked, like, okay, my Bitcoin is in a solid estate plan, both financially, legally, technically, there's a lot more peace in holding those coins for the long term or for generations.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. So we'll go just a couple more questions here, maybe one more from me and then Phoenix, one more from you as well, and then we'll wrap up. So Jessy, kind of a higher level question, just for a Bitcoiner that wants to start taking their financial plan and maybe their philanthropy a little more seriously, just be more deliberate on planning as a whole. What's one or two pieces of advice that you would give someone that's in that boat?
So explore the donor advised fund. There's a good chance it could make sense for you. We can get into the technicals of like how to gift the lowest basis Bitcoin you have, and that'll improve your tax situation. But there are so many times that I've seen this tool work. I wouldn't write it off as being, oh, too complex or it doesn't fit my situation. The economies of scale work their way down to pretty even light gifters or donors, right? It's not too complex, it's not too costly, and the efficiency has pretty good bang for its buck. And so the first would be consider it, learn more about it. You could go directly to Unchained. They have that product and tool available. If it could point you, if you're looking for the saw, it's on aisle 5. You can go grab a donor advised fund yourself and just install it. If you want more expertise around the planning and the kind of the architect that goes alongside, that's why we built Sound Advisory, right? If we're just looking for the tool, you can have that. If you want to know how the tool fits into everything you built, everything else you've got going on, right? If you've got IRAs or this family dynamic, or you're thinking about doing X, Y, or Z, that's where you might want a little more expertise or someone to bounce questions and ideas off of.
Got it. Makes sense. Phoenix, you got a lot.
Awesome. Well, that pretty well answered my question. Yeah, I was just going to ask how can someone jump in, and then if they're ready to move forward, how can they connect with you?
So we can be found at thesoundadvisory.com. So THE sound advisory with a Y.com. I'm on Twitter at Idaho Hodl. So Idaho like the state, and HODL. Try to keep tweets interesting there. Feel free to reach out. You can connect with our team. Introductions are free. We are a team of 2 CPAs, 3 advisors, some supporting staff as well. And that's why we built what we did, is to be a sounding board and a resource for people who care about sound money and good financial advice.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we appreciate it, Jessy, and we will send this recording out as well as information on how to contact any of us right after this. So we appreciate your time and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jessy.
Take care.